Well, okay. What is the book about? It's labeled Trailblazer in First Nation Education, but really it's the story of Doris Pratt's life, Doris Dowan-Pratt. She comes from the Sioux Valley Dakota First Nation. Um, Before she was a trailblazer in Native education, she went through the residential school experience, which affected her for the rest of her life, really. She, um, she went to grade 7 at Elkhorn and then 1 year at Brandon, then went home for a while and tried to find herself, and then became a teacher. And after she was a teacher for many years, she was an administrator, and then she worked at Brandon University. And all along the line, she was winning awards and going back to school and getting another degree. Her last degree, I'm pretty sure, was where she went to Arizona State University and was working on languages, of course, focusing on Dakota language. And after that, her teaching, um, she made sure that her students always knew that they should be proud of their heritage and that they should learn their culture and keep their language. She was very proud of her Dakota people. They were strong. She talked about their culture, but and really it was, I just went for one interview. The start was a phone call where I asked her about the IR-60 Dakota Reserve in the Turtle Mountain because I wanted to know the history. The government shut it down basically in 1913 and had the people move to Chinoopa and to Sioux Valley, and probably they moved to other places too, partly because they were so close to the border that there were too many people just scurrying over to Turtle Mountain. Um, so I wanted to find out about Doris's heritage, basically. So we talked about IR-60 and the history of the people who lived there and the culture. And I thought, great, a good article for Boundary Trail Heritage Region upcoming stories. She phoned me back about a month later and said, yeah, I want to talk to you again. So I went back to Sioux Valley and we had interview number 2. And then it sort of followed 9 more interviews where we talked about her life in residential school, which ensued her really because every interview we did, there was a residential school experience that she would talk about. Um, but she survived that residential school and it made her stronger. Like I said, she went on to university, and in the end of her teaching years, she became an advisor to the First Nation, the Manitoba Assembly of Chiefs. She was a translator for federal government meetings. She wrote children's stories. She wrote a phonetic alphabet for the Dakota children to learn. She talked to educators all over the place, was a member of the Treaty Commission presenters. So everybody knew her and knew of her. And as a matter of fact, after the story was written, we submitted a nomination to the Lieutenant Governor, to the Lieutenant Governor's Award for Historic Preservation and Promotion. And I got the most amazing letters from like the chief of the Manitoba um, Assembly of Chiefs and educators, and it was amazing the good words that people said about her. Unfortunately, as you know, she passed away before the committee could make a decision on the nominees for last year's Lieutenant Governor's Awards. And people I would like to thank. Ed Ledahowski. The interviews, like I said, there were a lot of references back to her school life at residential school. A fair amount of repeats because this was Doris's autobiography and she stressed what was important to her. I hardly asked any questions, so it's not really my book. I taped interviews. I went home and typed it out. And basically, that was my part. It's truly, as much as Ed and I could make it, an autobiography of her life. Ed tried to get out the repeats, he put it into chapters and into a timeline, and he spent probably as many hours on it as I did. I would like to thank Al Thorlifson, who reviewed Ed's reviewing. And for the family, the most important person was a lady from Arizona named Sandra Worley. She was Doris's adopted granddaughter as of their work at Arizona State. And Sandra spent her last she spent with Doris's last months, and she interviewed her in little 15-minute time slots when they were at Brandon Hospital, and read the book to her because Doris's eyesight had really failed her. Doris's whole body was kind of shutting down physically, but mentally she was just like really, really bright, right until the end of her life. First day I met her, I liked her. I consider her one of my best friends. I still miss her. And I know there are a lot of people out there who miss her too. And I think she's smiling because at the end she wanted to have her story told. And it did get told in a wonderful book, I think. And God bless her, or may the spirits bless her, because she was one of the best women I ever met. I think that's the end of my story, Gord.